Have you ever wondered why some looks stay with you like invisible marks, as if they said everything without moving their lips? What is it about the presence of certain women that silences the world around them and, at the same time, awakens a deep restlessness within a man? Perhaps you think it's just chemistry, chance, or beauty. But what if I told you there are archetypal forces at work in that moment, unseen by the eye, but which shape the way the male psyche reacts to the silent feminine? What if the woman, by saying nothing, said exactly what his soul most longs to hear? We live surrounded by noise, empty conversations, shallow promises, cries for attention, and yet, what truly transforms a man is not what is said, but what is felt. That which has no words, but carries weight. That which a woman awakens without even touching. Von Franz warned us about the living symbols that inhabit the collective unconscious, images and gestures that resonate like ancient music within the psyche. There are women who carry this symbol. They don't explain. They evoke. They don't present themselves. They happen. And when that happens, nothing remains the same. The male mind, however rational it may seem, is governed by forgotten myths, hidden feminine images he seeks without knowing it. When he encounters a woman who represents this living archetype, even for a few seconds, something awakens in him. A memory he's never experienced. A desire he can't name. Have you ever been this woman? Or seen another? Have you ever felt him looking at you as if trying to decipher something that only you seem to carry? This isn't coincidence. This is invisible language. This is psychic alchemy. But there's a cruel irony here. Most women abandon this power before they even understand it. They trade the art of silence for the noise of validation. They trade symbolic presence for verbal effort. And with that, they lose the chance to occupy the most powerful place in a man's psyche, the place of mystery. This video is for those who want to return. For those who sense there is a path back to this forgotten language. A path where silence is not absence, but mastery. Where the gaze is an arrow, and presence, a summons. Before diving into this universe, I invite you, no, I provoke you, to subscribe to this channel. Because no one has ever told you this like this. Because what you will discover here cannot be taught in ordinary words. And because, if you don't subscribe, you will remain stuck on the surface, while others awaken minds, silently, as if touching eternity. What lies behind what is unsaid begins now. There is a force that cannot be touched, but which is felt on the skin. The woman who awakens without speaking, who stirs a man's inner world without even brushing her voice against him, does not do so by chance. She does not depend on formulas or memorized words. She is presence. And presence cannot be improvised. She comes from a place where silence has been understood, not as absence, but as density. It is there, in the invisible realm between one gesture and another, that her energy begins to expand, and he begins to lose himself, without even realizing he is no longer the same. Because he is not just seeing a woman. He is feeling something that runs through him inside. There are women who talk too much and say nothing. And there are those who enter a room and everything changes. The temperature, the rhythm, the air. His mind becomes an unstable field, where old certainties begin to dissolve before the image of someone who simply is. The male psyche recognizes, even without understanding, that there is something there that defies control, that threatens masks, that activates memories that have never been experienced. And this unsettles him. Because a man does not fear noise, he fears what silences him inside. That which makes him look at himself and realize he cannot handle everything he cannot control. The woman who inhabits her own energy is like an inverted mirror. She shows not what a man wants to see, but what he didn't know he carried. And by doing so, without touching, without speaking, she invites him into a psychic territory where he has no guarantees, where his logic fails, where his reason trembles. And the more he tries to understand, the more he becomes entangled in what he feels. Because this woman doesn't ask for attention, she pulls it. She doesn't demand validation, she teases it. And this difference, however subtle, is what transforms a man's gaze into a voluntary prison, into obsessive curiosity, into a desire for something he's never known how to name. But there's a price to being this woman. Because the world teaches us to scream, to explain, to prove our worth. And to sustain presence, we must lose the fear of not being understood. We must inhabit our own silence with dignity, without anxiety, without the desperation of being translated. We must trust that energy speaks where words are lost. And that is rare. That's why, when a man encounters a woman like this, even for a moment, he never forgets her. Ce. Because it wasn't a conversation. It was an impact. Have you ever felt this? Have you ever been this woman or encountered someone like this? Leave a comment about what it awakened within you. What did this silence tell you? What moved it? Your story can be a bridge to another woman who hasn't yet understood her own power. And your words, even silent ones, can echo much further than you imagine. There's a secret language that lives in the body and reveals itself in small gestures. The woman who masters this art needs no rehearsals or speeches. She knows that the right movement, at the right moment, is worth more than 1,000 words. It's not forced seduction, it's living expression. When she lightly adjusts her hair or runs her fingers across her neck as if she doesn't even notice, the male unconscious awakens. He doesn't understand, but he feels. What she doesn't say with her mouth, she says with her body, and says it loudly. The feminine gesture, when born from the unconscious, carries a symbolic power that touches layers the man doesn't even know he has. These gestures don't just have an aesthetic function. They are living symbols, keys that open hidden portals within the male psyche. Von Franz already warned us that everything that isn't consciously elaborated acts as destiny. And that's exactly what happens here. The man finds himself captured, entangled, without knowing why. The way she crosses her legs, the way she walks, the millimeter pause before smiling, all of this creates a field of silent tension, where he is forced to be present. He doesn't think about her, he feels her. And in that feeling, something escapes his control. Something deeper, more primal, more true. There are women who erase themselves trying to be noticed. And there are those who, by moving truthfully, imprint presence in every gesture. This second understands that the body is a living language, a bridge between the visible and the invisible. She doesn't manipulate. She evokes. And in doing so, she becomes unforgettable. Because the man may forget what she said, but he will never forget how she moved his world with a simple touch of her lips. There are smiles that are concessions, others that are defenses, and then there are those very rare ones that function as a silent revelation. A smile that doesn't ask, doesn't explain, or plead. It simply appears, brief, mysterious, as if leaving a door ajar to something greater. When a woman smiles with this veiled intention, something happens in a man's mind. He feels a call he can't quite translate. It's as if she's saying something deeply intimate without moving her lips, and he, even if he doesn't understand, senses that there's a truth there that needs to be deciphered. A true smile isn't the one glued to your face all the time, but one that appears like an emotional eclipse, rare and full of meaning. When it appears in unexpected moments, it disrupts the logic of the interaction and instills doubt. Did she like it? Was it meant for me? Was it real? These questions, swirling silently in his head, create tension. And where there's tension, there's a tension. This kind of smile doesn't give the game away. It shuffles the pieces. It doesn't close. It opens. That's what makes it unforgettable. He doesn't respond, he instigates. And in the heart of the male psyche, what instigates is worth more than what is offered on a silver platter. A woman who understands the power of her smile doesn't use it as a tool, but as a symbol. She doesn't try to be pleasant. She simply lets the moment speak for her. The smile becomes a reflection of her inner state, not a strategy. And this, for a thoughtful man, is a living enigma. Because he realizes there's something there that can't be bought, rehearsed, or copied. It's spontaneous, yet layered. It's light, yet profound. And precisely because it can't be reproduced, that smile becomes an emotional memory tattooed on his mind. He doesn't remember exactly what she said, but he remembers that moment when she smiled. And everything changed. A woman's silence isn't absence. It's a territory. And within it resides an ancient force that few men know how to handle. When she chooses not to speak, not to justify, not to fill the voids with explanations, she creates a field where his mind gets lost trying to decipher. Silence gives nothing away, but neither does it deny. It becomes a mirror. And before this mirror, man sees himself, his fears, his projections, his fantasies. It is this unspoken space that becomes the stage where he projects everything that rationality cannot contain. True silence is not mute. It screams within the listener. It is an echo that resonates in the cracks of control. The absence of words, when charged with presence, leaves marks that speech could never leave. And what does this provoke in him? A state of searching. A need to understand exactly what was felt there. Because human beings are programmed to complete what is incomplete. And feminine silence, when used consciously, is precisely this unfinishedness that attracts, that captivates, that challenges. He can't shut it off. Her absence becomes a constant presence. The body is gone, but the silence remains. And the more he tries to understand, the more he loses himself. Because silence wasn't meant to be interpreted, it was meant to be felt. And in that feeling, he finds himself vulnerable. The woman who sustains silence with dignity and clarity needs no defenses. She doesn't give in to the anxiety of being understood. And this, for the male mind, is devastating. Because most voices seek to be heard, but few presences are capable of being remembered in silence. She didn't explain herself, but he's still thinking about her. And not because she said anything important, but because she said nothing, and yet, she touched him completely. The way a woman presents herself to the world isn't just an aesthetic choice. It's a psychic signature. The clothes she wears, the way she walks, the details of her care for her body and soul, all of this speaks before she says a word. Aesthetics aren't vanity when they come from within. She transforms into a symbolic language, a silent expression of what she represents. To the male mind, this doesn't go unnoticed. Even if he can't name it, he senses when her presence carries harmony, refinement, authenticity. He sees and feels a whole that impacts the unconscious, like a living symbol traversing reality. Von Franz said that symbols are more real than reality itself. And the woman who understands this becomes, herself, a symbol in motion. When aesthetics come from inner truth, every detail aligns with who she is, and not with what others expect. The way she paints herself, the accessories she chooses, the way her hair moves in the wind. All of this builds an atmosphere around her. And the man, upon entering this realm, realizes that there is no exaggeration, but essence. He is not in front of a shop window. He is in front of a silent narrative that beautifully tells the story of who she is without saying a single word. This woman doesn't wear trends. She wears meanings. She doesn't dress up to attract attention. She dresses up to express her own value. And this difference changes everything. Because the man who observes her feels something that goes beyond visual attraction. He feels respect, curiosity, enchantment. It's not the body, it's what the body communicates. It's not the perfume, it's what it evokes. Aesthetics, in this case, becomes a portal. And those who cross this portal rarely return the same. Because he didn't just see a beautiful woman. He saw beauty that has roots. And this is the beauty that doesn't fade with time. There are perfumes that are unforgettable, even after the body has departed. Scent is a liquid memory that escapes logic and infiltrates the deepest part of the soul. A woman who understands this doesn't use perfume merely as an accessory, but as an extension of her energy. She knows that smell touches areas of the mind where reason cannot reach. It's like an invisible fingerprint, etched in time, space, and the unconscious. And when it passes, something remains. Even if he moves on with his day, even if he never sees her again, her scent lingers, like a visitor who refuses to leave. This perfume isn't just a fragrance. It's an emotional presence condensed into notes that tell a story without words. It's not a brand, but a mystery. The right scent carries symbols. It can be an earthy aroma reminiscent of roots, a floral touch reminiscent of childhood, or a warm note that awakens desire and discomfort at the same time. And a man senses it, even without realizing it. He associates that scent with the sensation of having experienced something rare. His subconscious records everything. The moment, the place, the rapid breathing. And whenever the same scent crosses his path again, he is pulled back to the experience, even if he never encounters her again. The perfume becomes a kind of psychic signature. It doesn't explain, it marks. The woman who carries this within herself understands that she doesn't need to be physically present to linger. Her scent is like a note hidden in the pocket of his memory. And this has devastating power. Because time may pass, the image may fade, but that scent, no. It returns. It calls. It makes him, amidst so many other presences, still search for her. Because, without knowing why, he misses something that lingered in the air, and that has lodged itself forever within him. There are women who listen with their ears, but there are others who listen with their eyes. And when this happens, a man's perception changes completely. Because he feels, for the first time in a long time, that he is truly being seen. Not analyzed, not judged, but seen. This silent listening, without interruptions, without anxiety for a response, communicates something rare, complete presence. It's as if time slows down and, for a few moments, he can rest within that gaze. There is no pressure, no tension. Just a space on that he can exist without the armor. And that, for a man, is more impactful than any compliment. She doesn't need to say, "I'm here." The way she holds his gaze, the way she slightly inclines her body toward him, the way she follows his gestures with silent attention, all of this is already a wordless declaration. It's a symbolic gesture that says, "You matter." Active listening, when born from this quality of presence, isn't just communication. It's healing. Because a man, conditioned to repress emotions and forced to maintain control, finds there a rare portal of openness. He begins to trust. He begins to speak. He even begins to feel things he couldn't name. And all this happens not because she said something extraordinary, but because she didn't shy away from the moment. This woman isn't worried about impressing. She doesn't interrupt to prove she understands. She doesn't rush to give advice. She's there, completely, with her eyes immersed in him like someone reading a handwritten letter. And in this visual listening, something moves. The man feels touched in a place he didn't even know existed. And this silent touch has consequences. He leaves, but she remains on his mind. Not because of something she said, but because of everything she allowed him to feel. Because sometimes, what deeply marks a man isn't the woman who talks a lot, but the one who knows how to listen with her eyes. There's a strange magnetic force in a woman that doesn't need to be explained. She doesn't bend to fit in, doesn't mold herself to be accepted, doesn't disguise her rough edges to appear softer. She simply is. And within that being, she carries a rare, almost indomitable authenticity. This, for the man, is disconcerting. Because he's used to seeing women who try to please, who edit themselves in exchange for attention or affection. But when he finds someone who moves with inner freedom, something inside him shatters. She's not trying to win him over, and precisely for that reason, she becomes impossible to ignore. This woman's authenticity doesn't scream, it vibrates. She doesn't challenge with arrogance, but rather commands respect with serenity. Her every gesture communicates that she is not for sale. She belongs to herself. And this profoundly affects the control structure of the male psyche, because he feels he is not before someone he can lead, predict, or dominate. He is before a mystery. A woman who carries her own truth like someone carrying fire in her hands, unafraid of burning. This inner flame creates a field of fascination, because he senses that any attempt to capture her would be in vain. She doesn't surrender out of need. She chooses. This woman represents a symbolic threat to the male ego, but also a promise. The promise of something real, raw, transformative. She doesn't just arouse desire, she sparks internal confrontation. He begins to ask himself, who am I before someone who doesn't need me to exist? And this question, however uncomfortable, captivates him. Because the answer can only be constructed if he has the courage to connect with his own truth. Deep down he knows, women like this don't pass. They stay, even when they're gone. Because being touched by someone's freedom is being challenged to conquer your own. There is a place where absence becomes presence, where silence speaks and the invisible reveals itself. In this space, a woman leaves an indelible mark, a resonance that transcends time and the body, subtle and inevitable. It is there, in this deep echo, that a man's mind finds something it wasn't looking for, but can't help but feel. It is the invisible dance between what was said and what was left unspoken, a bridge that connects souls even across distance. You realize now that nothing was by chance. Every gesture, every look, every silence was a summons to something greater, something that still pulses within you. And it is precisely in this absence, in this void full of meaning, that true feminine presence reveals itself. It is not bound by space or time. It inhabits affective memory like a flame that refuses to be extinguished. This flame is not to be controlled, but to be felt, respected, recognized. Ask yourself, what silence within you is waiting to be heard? What forgotten mystery insists on vibrating in the shadows of your consciousness? The answer will not come with words, but with the deep feeling that something within you has awakened, something you already knew needed to awaken. The journey we've traveled together doesn't end here. It's an expanding spiral, a never-ending cycle, an invitation to continuous transformation. The woman who awakens the mind without speaking is the living reminder that power resides in essence, not in explanation. That true encounter happens in silence charged with meaning, not in the noise of words. And that, to touch another deeply, you must first touch yourself. May you allow this awakening to spread within. May it reverberate in your life like a melody you will find. I want to hear it over and over again, even when the world is silent. If this video touched you, if it provoked questions that still echo, don't let the silence swallow you again. Like, share, and comment below on what this awakening brought forth within you. Subscribe to follow this journey of mystery and transformation, not out of obligation, but because you now feel part of something that goes far beyond the visible. True change begins when we allow the invisible to guide us. May your silence speak louder than any words.